Chapter 61. A Change of Plans. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. After bursting out the door, Aaron found himself in what looked to be a large, walled courtyard. Although there were clear signs of battle in the form of bodies and damaged buildings, there weren't any enemies present as far as Aaron could tell. Without having to face the attack he had been expecting, Aaron almost felt lost as he headed into the courtyard to take a better look at the surroundings. There was no trace of any living academy guards, and the gate in the wall had been twisted into a ruined mess by some frighteningly strong force. While he remained watchful, it seemed as if the 4 prisoners from the most heavily locked cells had completely wiped out their enemies. Behind him, he could hear the freed prisoners flooding into the courtyard, their voices low but excited. Some sounded fearful and others eager, but none of them sounded the least bit calm. There were well over 100 now, and even if most of them were weak, their sheer numbers should provide at least some protection. In the Empire, there were few places where over 100 mages would not be considered a force to be reckoned with. Quiet! Aaron hissed suddenly, and a few moments later, the muffled voices disappeared. The reason for the sudden order had been that Aaron thought he heard sounds of battle, and now, he could clearly hear thunderous explosions far in the distance, several miles away, if not more. "Hear that," he said to the windsong and the mages who were standing closest to him. "I think the others have drawn them away. If we hurry, we can." He did not get the chance to finish, because just then, a small group of white-clad academy mages emerged from the ruined gate in the surrounding wall. For a moment, the two groups stood watching each other, seemingly frozen in shock. Both the escaped prisoners and the academy patrol had clearly not expected to run into their enemies just now, and neither side responded immediately. The first to react were the prisoners. As if by some unspoken agreement, several dozens of them simultaneously threw their most powerful attacks at the academy patrol, the others following an instant later. Aaron was among those who attacked, and faced with academy mages, he drew upon all the might of the raw essence within him. Just his attack alone was enough to eliminate the academy patrol. Combined with the other prisoners' attacks, it was so strong that it ripped not just through the patrol, but also through the wall behind, through the buildings behind that, and through everything else for at least a quarter mile. Aaron cursed loudly, at once recognizing his mistake. In the blink of an eye, their chance to make an easy escape while most academy mages were fighting elsewhere was lost. With this idiotic display of power, they had just announced their presence to any mage within half a dozen miles, and the academy would be sure to respond. Worse, the moment Aaron threw the devastating attack, he felt a sense of relief, with the pain in his body lessening immediately. At any other time that would have been a welcome change, but right now, Aaron knew what it meant. That the raw essence of the realm-opening pills was beginning to run out. He had barely fought at all, instead using the raw essence on doors and locks until it almost ran dry. It had been worth it, as he had exchanged his raw essence for temporary allies who had already proven their worth many times over, clearing a safe path out of the prison. Yet now, Aaron felt painfully vulnerable, with his fount of power running dry long before the final fight was over, or worse, before it had even truly begun. If he was lucky, he would have another dozen strong attacks left before the raw essence ran out. That might be enough, but only if he was lucky enough to avoid any grandmasters. After that, he would have to rely on his own strength. And although he had grown much stronger since Panurge had locked him away, he knew he could not hope to match a grandmaster with only his own power. Of course, he still had more realm-opening pills left, but after the golden-haired man's warning, he would only take those as a last resort, and only if there were absolutely no other options available. He shook his head. It was pointless to think about all of this. What he needed to focus on was one thing, and one thing only. To escape as soon as possible. "Listen up," he called out. "Right now, every mage in the city is coming for us. The only way we can escape is if we leave now, and don't stop until we're out of danger." Aaron was about to lead the way out of the city when the short female mage once more spoke up. "No," she called out, shaking her head anxiously. Half of us will be dead before we're outside the city, and the other half will die while being chased down in the plains surrounding us. Then what do you suggest we do? Aaron asked. From the tone of her voice, he could already tell she had a plan. We attack the main prison, she said. Most guards will still be chasing the others, or guarding the outer walls. The few that remain to guard the main prison won't expect an attack, and once we're there, with the prisoners we free on our side, we'll easily be able to fight them off. This isn't the main prison? Aaron asked flatly, only barely having heard the words that came after. He was astonished at the idea that the prison he had just escaped from would not be enough to hold the Academy's foes. The woman looked slightly annoyed, as if the question was the kind of thing a particularly ignorant 5-year-old might ask. Of course not. The main prison is gigantic. It holds many thousands of prisoners. Then how do we get there? Aaron asked. He did not like the idea, but he could not think of a better one, and he knew they had little time left to spare. Just follow me, the woman said. I know a path that should take us there quickly. Before he could reply, several bolts of lightning shot at them. Although they missed Aaron and the woman, a handful of people around them died instantly, and Aaron immediately turned his attention toward their source. At a glance, he saw a tall white-robed man at the head of a small group of Academy mages. Other prisoners had reacted even quicker than Aaron, and already, the Academy mages were having trouble defending from the torrent of fire, wind, water, earth and other types of essence that came soaring their way. Aaron shot a blast of raw essence toward them, intentionally limiting himself to not waste his rapidly dwindling power. The shot was only barely enough to disrupt the Academy mages' defenses, but that was enough. With the numerous attacks from the former prisoners coming at the Academy mages in a constant barrage, just having their protection disrupted for a moment was an instant death sentence. As the Academy mages died, their bodies torn apart by dozens of magic attacks, Aaron turned back toward the short woman. Lead the way, he said, but hurry. We have only moments before more of them arrive. The woman smiled confidently. Just follow me. We'll be gone before they have a chance to catch up. She set off immediately, with Aaron following closely behind her, and the other mages following behind him. Aaron fervently wished that she would be right. If she wasn't, every single one of them would likely die. Chapter 62 Assaulting the Prison. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Aaron followed the short woman as she led him back inside the prison building, a long line of escaped prisoners trailing behind them. Some of the prisoners looked unhappy with the sudden change in plans, and Aaron couldn't blame them. After the conditions they had to endure within the walls of this building, it was only natural that they had little interest in going back. A handful of them actually didn't follow the group back inside, instead running out of the gate and leaving the walled area behind. Their screams only lasted some moments, but that was enough to tell the other prisoners what was waiting for them outside the walls. No others left after that. Understanding that beyond the courtyard lay only death and that the courtyard itself offered little protection, the remaining prisoners hurried back inside. With a thought, Aaron directed the bushy-bearded mage from the lowest level of the prison, the one he had slapped for trying to command him, to take a handful of prisoners and cover the exit. The moment anyone enters the courtyard, attack them with all you have, Aaron ordered the mage. If his instincts were right, it wouldn't be long before the first Academy mages made their way into the courtyard. Once they did, some fierce attacks might see them off until more help arrived. It wouldn't buy them much time, but hopefully, they wouldn't need much. This way, the short woman said, motioning for Aaron to follow her. She led Aaron to a small office located on the side of the main hall. When they entered it, Aaron saw only the door through which they had come in, and he shot the woman a questioning look. Help me move this aside, she said, pointing toward a massive wooden bookcase that covered half the wall and reached all the way to the ceiling. Aaron helped move the bookcase, and he was surprised to find that it slid to the side easily. With the bookcase out of the way, a small stone chamber was revealed, empty but for a single spiral staircase leading down beneath the floor. How did you know about this? Aaron asked the woman, suddenly suspicious. That she was familiar with most of the general details of the stronghold wasn't too strange. It made sense for at least some of the prisoners to be familiar with the prison and the stronghold that housed it. Yet her familiarity with the stronghold's secrets was a different matter. There was no way some random prisoner would know about that. I used to be a member of the academy, she replied. A captain at the stronghold. They imprisoned me after I refused to lock up. Her next words were drowned out by a barrage of thunderous noises, and Aaron could suddenly sense a great amount of essence being used. He understood that the mages guarding the courtyard had just spotted enemies and attacked them, and he knew that even if these were scared off, it would not be long before more arrived. He took a quick look around the chamber, then spotted Winsong. Winsong, he said. Tell the men guarding the courtyard to join us the moment everyone's inside. And close that door behind us when you follow. Aaron had little doubt that the academy mages would find them even if the exit were hidden, but every second they spent searching would give Aaron and the prisoners a better chance of making it to the main prison. Of course, what would happen once they arrived was a different matter entirely. Let's go, Aaron said, motioning for the others to join him. If you see any academy mages, don't hesitate in attacking. Without waiting, he set off, heading down the staircase. Aaron soon discovered that it led to a dark and narrow underground passage. Little more than a tunnel, it was only barely wide enough for two people to walk abreast, and in places the ceiling was just a single hand removed from his head. He illuminated the way with an orb of fire, and he could see that the passage was dusty and filled with cobwebs. From the look of things, it hadn't been used in years. As they headed deeper into the passage, Aaron in the lead with the short woman next to him, and hundreds of mages following behind them, he could not help but feel a sudden wave of anxiety. If they were betrayed, a single blast of essence would be enough to collapse the ceiling and bury all of them. And if there were enemies waiting at the end of the passage, Aaron and all those behind him would be slaughtered with ease. Aaron cast a nervous look at the short woman next to him, suddenly suspicious of her explanation for the knowledge she had of the stronghold. Despite Aaron's misgivings, they arrived unharmed at the end of the passage not much later, with another spiral staircase leading out of the underground passage. Wait, the woman said, just as Aaron was about to head up the stairs. The chamber upstairs leads directly to the guards' quarters. The moment we come out, there will be battle. Do you know where the other prisoners are? Aaron asked. The woman nodded. There are two main areas where then you will lead a group to free them, Aaron interrupted her. I and the others will try to keep the academy busy as long as possible. The woman hesitated, but only for a moment. Be careful. Most of the guards are weak, but among their commanders will be masters and grandmasters, she warned. Aaron nodded. Wait here for a short while after we attack, he said. I'll try to draw away as many of them as I can. A moment later, he added, and collapse the ceiling of the passage behind us after we attack, so we don't get attacked from behind. Already, an idea had formed in his head. If one group could attack with enough force to shock and distract the enemy, the other group could use the confusion to release the prisoners. And once the prisoners were free, the tide of the battle would turn their way. It was simple, barely enough to be called a plan. But then, the situation wasn't one that allowed for complex planning. Just organizing this plan took more time than Aaron would have liked, but eventually, they managed to split the prisoners into two groups. The first group, the larger one, would be led by Aaron and Winsong, and they would focus on doing as much damage as possible as quickly as possible, while clearing the way to the dungeons for the second group. The second group would be led by the short woman and the bearded man. Aaron was fairly certain that both were grandmasters, and as long as his group cleared the way, they should be able to break out the prisoners without too much trouble. The plan wasn't bad, but the raw essence from the realm-opening pills that Aaron had used to escape was now close to running out. Once it was gone, Aaron would have a hard time fighting even a master, much less a grandmaster. And that was where Winsong came in. Aaron looked at the man as they both stood in front of the exit, then gave him a nod. Winsong nodded in return and took a deep breath. A moment later, the wall in front of them was blown to pieces by a massive gust of wind, revealing a white-robed man sitting behind a desk, with a stunned expression on his face. Immediately, Aaron rushed forward, throwing a battering force spell at the man with his left hand while raising his star metal sword in the other. The spell caught the man head-on just as he got up, and he staggered several paces backward. Before he could recover, Aaron's sword hit him at full force. Once, twice, thrice, the sword struck, delivering grievous wounds to the man. The mere fact that he wasn't killed outright suggested that he was extremely powerful, but it was no use. Just as he regained his footing and turned toward Aaron, he was struck from behind by a devastating attack from Winsong. Even in the middle of battle, Aaron could not help but feel awe at seeing the Windblade spell used by a Grandmaster who specialized in using wind. The attack was only barely perceptible, and it struck more like a razor than a great sword. The white-robed mage who was turning to attack Aaron only had time to widen his eyes as a thin line of blood appeared across his neck. A moment later, his head toppled to the ground, and his body collapsed. The exchange was over in a second or two, and Aaron did not pause as it ended. Instead, he immediately rushed through the door, out of the office and into the hall that lay beyond it. The numerous white-robed guards in the hall did not surprise Aaron, exactly, but he still had to suppress a gasp when he saw their numbers. There were several hundreds, at the least, and it looked as if they had just gathered here only moments ago, probably about to set off in pursuit of the escaped prisoners. Yet right now, their numbers did not help them. Unlike Aaron, the guards did not expect the confrontation. Although some of them had turned toward the office after the sudden noise, the emergence of Aaron still took them completely by surprise. When Aaron's sword cut down 5 of them in as many breaths, surprise turned into terror, and they scattered in all directions, desperately trying to get away from the sword even as they stumbled over each other. Given a few moments to recover they might have done so, but Winsong entered the hall only seconds after Aaron. Immediately, he sent dozens of wind blades cutting through the crowd, further fueling the panic. The guard situation only worsened from there, because behind Winsong followed the other prisoners, first a handful, then dozens, then hundreds, all of them attacking the moment they laid eyes on the white uniforms in front of them. In moments, the hall was transformed into a chaotic battlefield. Yet even amid the chaos, it was clear that the guards were on the losing side of the exchange. The attack had just been too sudden, too unexpected, and too violent. As the prisoners unleashed their rage at the academy on the guards, Aaron and Winsong sought out the enemy commanders among the crowd. The tactic they used was simple but effective. Using the physical advantage body refinement gave him, Aaron attacked the enemy commanders up close. The weaker ones among them simply fell to his sword, while the stronger ones were opened up to Windblade's magic attacks, who struck them down with cold efficiency. Just a few minutes later, the last of the guards fell, his white uniform dyed deep red by the blood of a dozen mortal wounds. Seeing the massacre, Aaron took a deep breath. The first confrontation had gone better than expected, but there was no time to celebrate. At least some of the guards would have escaped to warn the others, and if those that remained in the rest of the prison could reorganize, the battle might yet be turned around. Aaron would not allow that to happen. Barely even pausing to catch his breath after this first victory, he moved onward, intent on using the momentum of this first strike to defeat the enemy completely. Chapter 63 Resistance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Watch out! Aaron yelled. Winsong barely dodged the fireball, but the prisoner behind him wasn't as lucky. Before the man had time to look shocked, he was dead, a head-sized hole burned through his chest. Aaron rushed toward the academy mage who had launched the attack, a terrifyingly strong fighter with a hard face and snow-white hair. And, if Aaron was right, one of the few grandmasters who still fought on the side of the academy at the prison. Their initial attack had been unexpectedly successful. Before the academy could mount a defense, Aaron, Winsong, and the prisoners who accompanied them had overrun the guards' quarters, taking down hundreds of unprepared enemies while losing less than 24 of their own. Without delay they had forged ahead to the officers' quarters, attacking with enough fury that it seemed as if they really were intent on finding and fighting the enemy commanders. In truth, the whole thing was a ruse. With their attack on the officers' quarters they hoped to draw away those few guards who still defended the dungeons, allowing a small group of their allies to release the prisoners. The plan was simple enough, but it did rely on them not running into any unforeseen obstacles, like the white-haired commander who was currently fighting off both Aaron and Winsong as his men engaged the other prisoners. Unlike their previous foes, this one seemed to understand instantly that Aaron was trying to create openings for Winsong, and he wasn't playing along. Despite Aaron's attacks, the mage constantly managed to stay out of Winsong's line of sight, using Aaron and other prisoners to block Winsong from attacking him. At the same time, he steadily took out weaker prisoners around them, while launching the occasional attack of opportunity at Aaron or Winsong. Aaron knew he could not let this continue. With the enemy commander taking down prisoners one after the other, it was only a matter of time before their group would break. Face twisted in frustration, he launched himself at the enemy commander. The man saw the opening instantly, and he launched a white-hot fireball at Aaron. Aaron had expected the attack, of course, and he put up a force shield just as the fireball was about to hit. The fireball shattered the force shield, but lost most of its power in doing so. What remained slammed into Aaron, and although he staggered backward, his essence-strengthened body wasn't injured in the slightest. Aaron immediately retaliated with a blast of raw essence that hit the mage square in the chest, but he was surprised to see that although the man swayed on his feet, he did not fall. The man's power still wouldn't save him, although Aaron hoped the blast of raw essence would be enough. His true aim was to distract the academy commander long enough to create an opening for Winsong. Just as the academy commander regained his balance, several thin red lines appeared across his body. A moment later, blood gushed forth from a dozen deep wounds, and he collapsed just seconds after that. Their commander gone, his men were no longer able to keep up their fight, and the last of them fell within a minute. That was too close, Aaron said as he approached Winsong. Winsong nodded, a grave expression on his face. He was a grandmaster, like me, but... He did not finish the sentence, but Aaron knew what he was thinking. The academy commander had clearly been stronger than Winsong. No point in worrying about that, Aaron said. We should get going again. By now, they should now have created enough space for their allies to make it into the dungeons. If they could just distract the academy guards a little longer, their first reinforcements should appear soon enough. Once that happened, the battle would be all but won. Aaron and Winsong moved ahead, the prisoners following behind them. Although their numbers had fallen by another 24, there were still more than enough to keep the academy occupied a little longer. As they hurried through the hallways, Aaron took the lead, cutting down those guards who were still scattered through the prison and found themselves in Aaron's way. The few who made it past him were quickly cut down by Winsong and the others, and their group moved through the hallways like a storm of death, leaving only corpses where they passed. Aaron was just starting to begin feeling hopeful when they burst into yet another hall, and found that this time, it was filled with enemies. There were at least 100 guards before them, and Aaron cursed under his breath the moment he laid eyes on them. Unlike the previous groups, these guards were clearly prepared for battle. They were arranged in 3 lines, their weapons drawn and ready, and behind them was a broad staircase upon which stood several white-robed mages. It was a perfect counter to the group of prisoners, a handful of powerful mages who were free to attack while they were protected by several rows of well-armed guards. Before Aaron could act, the middle mage raised his hand in a sharp gesture. In an instant, 24 of the prisoners were killed, their bodies crushed by what seemed like an invisible force that hit like an avalanche. Kill the intruders. The man who spoke was the one who had just attacked, and other than his strength, he seemed completely unremarkable. He was of average height and weight, with brown hair and a face that was neither handsome nor ugly. If Aaron had not just seen his frightening power, he could easily have mistaken the man for a bookkeeper in a small merchant clan, or a clerk in the offices of some low-ranking city official. But Aaron had no time to spend considering the man's appearance. He rushed forward with an inhuman burst of strength, appearing amid the guards before they could even turn their weapons toward him. In an instant, half a dozen of them lay dead or dying, and Aaron braced himself for what was about to come. As expected, he had drawn the mage's attention, and a moment later a terrifyingly strong blast of essence struck the force shield he had raised, shattering it instantly and sending Aaron flying into the wall with a violent crash. Had he not practiced body refinement, the impact would have killed him, but as it was, he was only barely injured. Immediately, he got to his feet, casting a glance at the monstrously strong academy mage. As expected, the man's eyes went wide with surprise, and Aaron almost grinned as he knew that Windsong had used the opportunity to attack. Yet this time, there were no sudden wounds, nor did the enemy mage collapse. Instead, he swept his hand in Windsong's direction with a violent gesture, and a thunderous noise sounded as a devastating force crashed down on Windsong and the prisoners around him. Aaron's eyes went wide with shock at the sight. Windsong and at least 24 of the prisoners around him were struck with a blast of power so devastating it cracked even the stone floor beneath them. Without even seeing the results, Aaron knew none had survived. With a feeling of panic that bordered on nausea, he sensed the amount of power that was being used, and he knew at once that the man before him had to be an archmage. Before Aaron had the chance to even consider fleeing, another thunderous crash sounded as the hallway behind their group collapsed, shutting off the only path of escape. "Leave none alive," the archmage said, his voice completely calm. A moment later, deadly attacks began raining down on the group of prisoners. Chapter 64 Facing the Archmage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The hall had exploded into chaos the moment the academy mages and guards attacked, and for a time, all Aaron could do was desperately dodge the mages' attacks while fighting off the guards. That he still remained standing was only because the academy mages seemed hesitant to kill their own, allowing him to use the guards to block them from attacking. Yet while Aaron was barely holding on, the other prisoners weren't faring as well. Within minutes half of them lay dead, and more fell by the second, with both the guards' weapons and the mages' essence attacks cutting them down mercilessly. Seeing that the situation had turned desperate, Aaron knew he had to use the last of the raw essence within his body. There was only enough left for a few more attacks, but there was no point in saving it now. Aaron rushed forward, ducking behind a small cluster of guards to avoid a burst of fire that lashed his way from the direction of the mages. In the blink of an eye, his sword cut down the guards, and suddenly there was an open path from Aaron to the mages. Barreling forward, Aaron controlled the last of the raw essence within his body, forcing it into a series of blasts that he launched at the 5 mages. 6 attacks slammed into the small group, each of which far surpassed anything Aaron could have managed by himself. 2 of the mages were killed outright, their bodies ripped apart by the violent energy of the raw essence as it hit them. 2 more were sent to the floor, and even if they weren't killed directly, they were out of the fight for at least some moments. The only one who remained standing was the archmage, and even he appeared to be swaying on his feet. Yet it wasn't enough. Aaron had aimed the bulk of his raw essence attacks at the archmage, and seeing the man was still standing, he knew the battle was lost. With the last of the raw essence gone, Aaron would have to rely on his own strength. And if even the raw essence attacks weren't enough to take down the archmage, there was no way his own power could even harm the man, much less defeat him. Despite this, Aaron did not despair. If he was to fall, so be it, but he wouldn't give up until he was well and truly defeated. The remaining mages were still recovering from Aaron's attack, and he continued his rush toward them. One of those who had been sent to the floor was just getting back to his feet when Aaron's star metal sword hit him in the neck at full force. Although the blow did not decapitate him outright, the sword still cut deep enough to cause a fountain of blood to gush forth from his neck, and his body slumped to the ground just a moment later. Without pausing, Aaron hurried to the other downed mage, intent on killing the man before he had a chance to recover. Even if he could not defeat the archmage himself, taking out the man's allies certainly could not hurt his chances. Yet before Aaron could reach the downed mage, an overwhelming force slammed into his side, and he was swept away like an ant being struck by a giant. He was smashed into a wall, and as he got back to his feet he could feel that this time, he was seriously injured. Ignoring his injuries, he immediately rushed into the middle of the ongoing battle between the guards and the prisoners. The danger the guardsmen posed to him was nothing compared to the threat of the archmage. Facing an opponent he could not harm but who could kill him with a single attack, the only one thing he could do was to avoid his fate just a little longer. He waded through the guardsmen's lines, making little effort to attack them and only taking out those who got in his way. Fighting them wasn't important now, all that mattered was that he did not remain in the same place for even a second. Despite his best efforts to use the guards as cover, it did not take long before he was struck by another attack from the archmage, and he was sent to the ground. Ignoring his pain and injuries, he immediately got back to his feet and jumped to the side, just in time, because an instant later 2 guards near the spot where he had fallen exploded in a shower of blood and gore. At this, Aaron understood that the archmage was no longer taking care to avoid harming his allies, and he knew the end was drawing near. Already he could feel his movements being slowed by his injuries, and even using the guards for cover, it was becoming increasingly difficult to avoid the archmage's attacks. Still, he fought on. More guards fell to his sword, and several magic attacks that had been aimed for him took down academy guards instead. Then another attack slammed into him, and again he was sent to the ground. This time, he had a harder time getting back on his feet, his body already driven far beyond its limits. When he finally got up, he knew he had been too slow, the next attack would hit before he could move, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Yet the attack did not come, and when Aaron looked at the archmage, he saw that the man stood frozen, his face twisted in a horrified expression. Aaron turned around, and he could see that the collapsed hallway had somehow been cleared, the 100-ton pieces of stone that had blocked it earlier now swept to the side. In the middle of the hallway stood the short woman, accompanied by at least a dozen mages, none of whom he recalled seeing earlier. Although the sight was right in front of him, Aaron's injury-muddled mind took some moments to register it. Finally, understanding dawned, and he breathed a deep sigh of relief. They had made it. The mages tasked with freeing the prisoners had done so, and just in time to save Aaron's life. "Kill him," the woman said with a look at the archmage. Her tone was casual, as if she was talking about a fly to be swatted. The mages who accompanied her attacked all at once, a dozen streams of essence hitting the archmage at the same time. Even with Aaron's mind clouded by the injuries he had sustained during the desperate fight, he could still feel that the attacks were terrifyingly powerful. With a start, he realized that each of these mages was at least as strong as the man they were now attacking. The archmage went down in seconds, his body pierced, crushed, and torn apart by a barrage of devastating attacks. Aaron shivered at the sight. The seemingly invincible man who had come so close to killing him was defeated in an instant, without any hope of even defending himself. Although his life had been saved, this stark reminder of his own weakness filled Aaron with a deep sense of unease, and he did not allow himself to dwell on it. Instead, he turned his attention to the woman. "You made it," he said, still only half believing that it was true. "And not a moment too soon, it seems." She looked around the hall, where the last of the academy guards were being slaughtered by her companions. None of the others survived. Aaron glanced toward the area where Winsong had fallen. "They were too strong," he said simply, voice thick with regret. "There are no battles without casualties," the woman said. Then, a smile appeared on her face, and she continued, "But you performed even better than I expected." To Aaron's eyes, the smile on her face looked unnatural, almost as if it belonged to someone else. "Who are you?" he asked. "You don't recognize an old friend." The woman grinned broadly, and a ripple went through her face. An instant later, only the grin remained the same, and the rest of the face now exactly resembled Panurge's. Aaron knew he should be shocked, but after everything that happened since he broke out of his cell, he found himself unable to feel much of anything. "Why?" he asked. I'll explain it after we get your wounds looked at, Panurge said. If Aaron didn't know any better, he would have thought the man sounded worried. Aaron nodded, vaguely aware of the terrible shape his body was in. He was about to say something, but just as he opened his mouth, the world went black before his eyes and he collapsed. Chapter 65 Birds and Dragons. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Aaron awoke in a small but clean bedroom, lying in a bed so hard it almost seemed like its owner had wanted to prove his toughness even when sleeping. The room was furnished with simple but well-made furniture, and several ink drawings of battle scenes decorated the walls. At a glance, Aaron thought it should be one of the commander's quarters. The first thing he did after waking was to examine his body, and when he did, he saw that it was covered in bruises. And not just that, with every breath he took he felt sharp stabs of pain in his chest. From this, he knew that at least some of his ribs had to be bruised or even broken. His left shoulder and arm were covered in bandages, and when he looked underneath them, he found several deep wounds, still open even if they weren't bleeding anymore. Moving his left arm was extremely painful, but he felt some relief at this. The mere fact that he was able to move the arm at all meant there likely wouldn't be any permanent damage. Worse were the injuries he could feel within his body. Even if they were invisible to the eye, he could sense that they were more serious than his surface wounds. His dire state made it clear that he had come within a hair's breadth of losing his life, and when he recalled the fight, he knew that it was a small miracle that he had survived at all. Even with the borrowed essence from the realm-opening pills, he had been no match for the Archmage. His training in body refinement had allowed him to survive attacks that would have killed most others, but even then, just distracting the Archmage for a few minutes had ended with him very nearly stepping across the brink of death. He shuddered when he thought about how the fight would have ended had Panurge not appeared at the last moment, and once more, he felt like an ant stuck in a war between giants. The temporary power of the realm-opening pills allowed him to play at being a true mage, but only for a short while. And each time he tried, it had almost cost him his life. Now, he had only 3 realm-opening pills left, but if the golden-haired warrior he freed from the prison was to be believed, taking even a single one of those would likely kill him. Not that it mattered much, in his present state, even a mild breeze might well kill him. He sat up in the bed with some effort. Trying to ignore the pain that seemed to be present in every fiber of his body, he closed his eyes, then began to perform Lord Zhang's circulation technique. With how badly hurt he was, using body refinement to heal his injuries felt a lot like trying to repair a collapsed building using only straw and mud. There was just too much damage to be healed easily, and the only thing that could help him recover was time. Nevertheless, he persisted. If healing completely would take a long time, then the sooner he got started, the better. Hours passed, but if Aaron's body saw any improvement at all, it was too small to be noticed. That was a very stupid thing you did. Aaron was shaken from his meditation by the voice, and when he looked up, he saw that Panurge was standing in front of him. Stupid. Aaron scowled in anger. The man, God, or whatever he might be had locked Aaron in a cell, then sent him to a fight he had no chance of winning. And now, Panurge was berating him. I gave you a gift more precious than gold or magic treasures, Panurge replied, and you squandered it. Although I will admit that you did so in a remarkable fashion. A realm and some spells in exchange for my freedom. You call that a gift? Aaron fumed with rage. Of course not, Panurge said calmly. My gift was the cell. Aaron was dumbfounded. Even for Panurge, this sounded unusually mad. What I gave you was a few decades to practice in safety, Panurge continued. Had you not used a foolish trick to break out long before you were supposed to, you would have eventually emerged with enough power to defend yourself. You expected me to stay there and slowly starve to death like the other prisoners. I provided you with food, Panurge pointed out. Unlike the others, you would not have had to feed on your own essence. A few short decades of training, and you would have been able to face grandmasters and perhaps even archmages on equal terms. With a gesture at Aaron's injured body, he added, and just look at you now, one small fight, and you look like you've been ravaged by a pack of hellhounds. You had me fight an archmage." Aaron's eyes were wide in disbelief at the man's bewildering words. "I had you fight a beetle," Panurge replied flatly. "A beetle?" Despite his anger, Aaron found himself speechless at the sheer absurdity of the statement. The ant looks at the beetle and thinks it a giant. The bird looks at both and sees only food. Panurge nodded in satisfaction, seemingly impressed with his own sagacity. "And I take it you're the bird?" Aaron asked. Without asking, he already understood that he was the ant. "Me." A wide grin appeared on Panurge's face. "I'm the mighty dragon, able to eat 1,000 birds in a single bite and still feel hungry afterward." Although Aaron knew it was a bad idea to provoke Panurge, he could not help but frown at the man's shameless boasting. Panurge laughed loudly. "If you don't want to believe me, I suppose I'll just have to show you." At once, Aaron felt panic. He understood very well that whenever Panurge wanted to do something, anything, bad things were bound to happen. Ignoring Aaron's fearful face, Panurge snapped his fingers. A moment later, Aaron found himself in the air, several thousands of feet from the ground. He was about to scream in panic when he realized he wasn't falling, instead simply floating in mid-air. "Look beneath you," Panurge said. After Aaron calmed his nerves, he glanced downward, doing his best to ignore the nauseous feeling the distance from the ground caused him. As he looked, he saw two vast armies facing each other, one twice the size of the other, with barely a mile between them. "Now look closer," Panurge said. Aaron was surprised to find his eyesight suddenly sharpening, to the point that he could now make out the individual soldiers of each army even from miles away. Studying the two armies, he could see that the larger one consisted of tens of thousands of knights in magnificent silver-colored armor, each wielding a sword and holding a large white shield. The smaller army, meanwhile, was made up of what looked to be monks in simple grey robes, their heads all shaved. Some of them wielded staves or swords, but most were bare-handed. "What is this?" Aaron asked. Despite himself, he was intrigued at the scene below him. "The start of a battle," Panurge replied. "Those fools in shining armor are part of the Brotherhood of Radiant Light, forces of order, like the Academy. Even the weakest of them is 1,000 times stronger than the beetle who came so close to crushing you." "And the others?" Although the knights were the first to catch his eye, the monks were the more interesting group to Aaron, if only because they seemed so ill-prepared for battle. "The others," Panurge continued, "are part of a small society of monks who decided to side with neither order nor chaos." Aaron furrowed his brow on hearing this. The idea that there were powerful groups who rejected both sides opened possibilities he had not previously considered. "Now look at that handsome fellow over there," Panurge said, pointing toward a lone figure who had just emerged from the smaller army. The man was wielding a simple wooden staff, and with a start, Aaron realized that he strongly resembled a bald Panurge, only instead of Panurge's maniacal grin, he bore an expression of calm resolve. Before Aaron could ask any questions, the lone figure started to move toward the large army, first at a jog, then at full sprint. When the figure had almost reached the knights' lines, he suddenly shot forward, almost faster than Aaron's eyes could follow. In an instant, knights began to fall one after the other, struck down by the wooden staff. While Aaron could not see the lone figure use magic, his movements suggested that he practiced body refinement, but at a level far beyond anything Aaron had thought possible. The fight went on for some time, and it was starting to look as if the lone figure was going to defeat the entire army by himself. Hundreds of the knights had already fallen, and although they fought desperately, nothing they did even slowed the lone figure in the slightest. Yet then, a giant white-robed man arose among the ranks of the knights. Surrounded by a bright glow, he rapidly increased in size, standing at least 100 feet tall after just a moment. Ignoring the lone figure who was fighting the knights, the giant man pointed his right hand toward the monks' army. A massive stream of white light burst forth from his hand, and it struck in the middle of the army. Instantly, the ground exploded where the stream of light hit it, and before Aaron could even register what was happening, the entire stretch of land where the army had stood was turned into a lake of boiling rock. Before Aaron could see what happened next, Panurge snapped his fingers again, and Aaron found that he was back in the small bedroom. "Was that real?" he asked, voice subdued as he tried to understand what he just witnessed. "Perhaps," Panurge replied, although, for the first time since Aaron had met him, his eyes seemed to lack their normal exuberant madness. What happened next? The scene had ended abruptly, and although Aaron knew it could all just have been a product of Panurge's imagination, he did not believe that to be true. "A dragon had a feast," Panurge answered cryptically, his voice emotionless. "Why did you show me this?" Even if the man seemed mad at the best of times, Aaron could not believe that it was all just a simple coincidence. There had to be something more to his sudden interference in Aaron's life. "To help you understand," Panurge said. "That the monsters you fear are insects to others. That the strength of your enemies will not match your own. That at any moment, a dragon can step out of the shadows and swallow all the birds in this world." "But why me?" Aaron asked. Whatever it was that Panurge was trying to tell him, he understood little of it. Yet what truly baffled him was that Panurge had chosen to target him of all people. "Why not?" Panurge asked in return. "Should I have a reason for making a young man's life a little more interesting than it would be otherwise?" When Aaron saw that the manic twinkle had returned to Panurge's eyes, he knew there was no point in asking further questions. Chapter 66 Leaving the Stronghold. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 3 months had passed since Aaron escaped from the prison, and by now, he had recovered almost completely. Although he would sometimes still feel pangs of pain if he moved too quickly, he knew that for some time already, he had been well enough to travel. That he remained here was in part because he wanted to recover fully before braving the dangers of the road, but mostly, he was reluctant to abandon the peace and safety of the stronghold. After the stronghold had fallen to the prisoners, surprisingly little had happened. Aaron had been unconscious during the final battle for the stronghold, and after he came to, it had taken some weeks before he had been able to leave his bed. When he finally got the chance to explore the stronghold, he found it almost shockingly normal. Instead of the castle he had imagined, the stronghold was more like a small town, albeit an unusually well-fortified one. If the streets weren't exactly bustling with traffic, they were by no means abandoned either. Merchants and farmers sold their wares at the market, and on many street corners, there were hawkers vending food of questionable origins. Even many of the townsfolk remained, having taken the change of leadership in stride once it became clear that the prisoners had no intention of allowing the stronghold to descend into an orgy of pillage and murder. While many of the prisoners had left, the ones who chose to remain kept the stronghold at peace, interfering little in the townsfolk's affairs other than to buy their goods. Those few prisoners who did cause trouble were quickly dealt with by the others, and the sight of their bodies hanging from the walls did much to discourage further violence. The signs of battle had not been completely erased, of course. Many buildings still bore scars from what must have been terrifying attacks, and in several spots the buildings had been destroyed completely, only rubble remaining. Yet most of the damage had disappeared within weeks of the battle, and had it not been for the presence of some terrifyingly powerful mages, one could almost mistake the stronghold for a normal town. Initially, Aaron had feared that the academy would attempt to retake the stronghold, but when he shared his worries with Panurge, the man had merely laughed. As Panurge explained it, the prisoners who had taken control of the stronghold were strong enough to defend against anything short of a major assault from the academy. And although such an attack would come eventually, Panurge said it would take them years to organize it. Aaron wasn't fully comforted by the man's words of reassurance. It was Panurge, after all, but if an attack did happen, he should be able to flee before battle broke out. Moreover, leaving would not take him out of danger either. Even if he was confident in being able to handle any bandits he encountered, there was still the matter of his involvement in the fall of the prison. Most of those who knew his role had died in the fight against the Archmage, but if even a single person informed the academy, he had no doubt that there would be few places in the Empire where he would be safe. He wasn't exactly frightened by this. By now, he was used to the idea of the Academy wanting to kill him, but he still cherished the opportunity not to have to think about the Academy for a while. As he spent his days within the walls of the stronghold, Aaron sought little contact with the prisoners and the townsfolk. A few nights he spent drinking in the few taverns the stronghold counted, but other than that, he spent his days mostly by himself, focusing on his recovery and occasionally practicing his magic. "You're leaving for the Shadowflame Society, then?" Panurge asked him one evening. During Aaron's months at the stronghold, Panurge visited him often, although the man often disappeared for days at a time. Had Aaron not known better, he would almost have thought Panurge was lonely. Aaron nodded. "In a day or two." He did not bother to ask how Panurge knew about his plans. At this point, he was all too familiar with the man's annoying habit of knowing things he shouldn't. "You need to watch out for the Academy," Panurge said, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "I know," Aaron said, wondering why the man felt the need to point out something so obvious. "You don't," Panurge replied. "Before, you were just another youth with a forbidden realm. But now, if they figure out your part in the prisoner's escape, those they send after you will be far more dangerous." "Wasn't that your plan when you brought me here?" Aaron asked. "Force me to choose your side by making me an enemy of the Academy." With the benefit of hindsight, it hadn't been difficult to piece together Panurge's plan in putting Aaron in an Academy prison. Had Panurge merely wanted to give him a peaceful place to improve his strength, there were many other options. But in the prison, the only means of escape involved battle against the Academy's guards. "My plan had you becoming far stronger than you are now," Panurge said. "Weak as you are, you will be in far more danger than I intended. If they send stronger mages, I'll just have to run faster." Although Aaron knew he could only barely take on a master using just his own power, he was still confident in his ability to escape if needed. Panurge shook his head. "You still don't understand. Until now, you have faced only the dregs of the Academy." Dregs. Hearing this, Aaron could not help but frown. Just a few months ago, he had only barely survived the terrible power of an archmage, and now he was being told that his foe had been among the dregs of the Academy. "The Academy mages you've faced so far only studied a single pillar," Panurge said. "Pillar? Pillar of what?" Aaron furrowed his brow at the term, trying to recall if he had ever heard Master Zhao or Lord Jiang use it. "Power," Panurge replied. "Essence is one of the pillars, and so is strength, what you call body refinement." "What are the others?" Aaron asked. "You should learn that at the Shadowflame Society," Panurge said. "For now, all you need to know is that defeating a mage with only a single pillar is like kicking over a chair with only a single leg." "I have more questions," Aaron said promptly, now understanding that the subject was an important one. "And I am more than willing to answer them," Panurge replied with a grin. "All you need to do is pledge yourself to chaos and become my apprentice. With my guidance, you'll be able to squish Academy archmages like bugs in a matter of years." Aaron's enthusiasm instantly disappeared when he heard Panurge's conditions, but still, he hesitated for some moments. "I can't do that," he said finally. Even if he was willing to go against his better judgment and trust Panurge, he wasn't willing to tie his fate to chaos. "Then you will have to travel to the Shadowflame Society and learn by yourself," Panurge said, sounding not at all disappointed at the rejection. "It's a longer path, but if you manage to survive, the destination will be the same." Aaron nodded. Already, plans were forming in his mind, and he knew that he would no longer put off his departure from the stronghold. He left the stronghold just a few hours later, in the deep of night. He did not inform Panurge of his departure, but there was no doubt in his mind that the man knew about his decision well before he made it. Chapter 67 The Edge of the Empire. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After leaving the stronghold, Aaron traveled in secret. Although the Academy wouldn't be looking for him just yet, he knew it was only a matter of time until they came after him. To avoid leaving a trail for them to follow, he made it a point to avoid villages and even roads. Instead, he moved through the wilderness, doing all he could to avoid other travelers. The fewer people who saw him, the fewer ways the academy would have to find him. The journey was lonely, but not uncomfortable. His void bags contained all the supplies he needed, as well as a large tent to protect him during cold and rainy nights. He didn't know exactly where he was going, but that didn't bother him. As long as he kept moving west, he would eventually reach his destination. The Shadow Flame Society controlled the western border of the empire, and from what others had told him, he knew the entire border was covered by a massive mountain range that stretched thousands of miles from north to south. If he just kept moving west, he would eventually reach the mountains, and after that, he would have to find one of the border cities. It would be a long journey, but not a difficult one. As he traveled, he often thought about the things Pan-Urge told him before he left. Unless the man had been lying, a distinct possibility, essence was only one of the pillars of power, with strength being another one. Thinking about the matter, Aaron had remembered something Lord Jiang had told him when they first met. That true power requires strength in all regards, magical, mental, and physical. At the time, Aaron had dismissed it as a mere platitude, but now, he suspected that Lord Jiang had actually been talking about the pillars of power, even if he hadn't used the words. And thinking back further, he also recalled how Master Zhao had started his training. Not with magic, but with months of sword practice. The more he thought about it, the more he became certain that Pan-Urge had told him the truth. And not just that, he began to understand that even if he hadn't known it, his training so far had involved more than just one pillar. Until now, he had believed essence manipulation and body refinement to be mostly separate things, but looking back, he wondered how he could have been so blind to the truth. When Lord Jiang had taught Aaron body refinement, it was to allow Aaron's body to withstand more essence than it could handle otherwise. And conversely, when he first learned about body refinement, Lord Jiang had him use shadow essence to strengthen his body. Although he had later switched to using natural essence drawn from the natural world instead of realms, the memory now helped him understand that there was a stronger connection between the physical and the magical than he had realized. Once Aaron got over his initial shock at both these new insights and his own blindness, he set off on a frenzied quest to learn more about the connection between body refinement and essence manipulation. Although most of his time was spent traveling, he used every free moment trying to understand how his magical and physical powers affected each other. Yet despite these efforts, he made no progress whatsoever. With only a vague idea of what he was even looking for, it was like searching for a needle in a haystack without ever having seen a needle before. After nearly 2 months of fruitless experiments, he gave up. Pan-Urge had said Aaron would learn more about the pillars of power at the Shadow Flame Society, and he grudgingly accepted that his curiosity would have to wait until he reached his destination. Instead, he moved his attention to the spells Pan-Urge had given him, Battering Force and Force Shield. The realm-opening pills whose power he had used to escape the cell had also further opened his force realm, and although he already had a basic grasp of the spells, using them with more essence wasn't an easy task. Months passed as he traveled through forests, hills, and grasslands, only stopping for rest and practice. His travels were smooth if somewhat boring. He rarely encountered other people, and when he did, they were hunters, shepherds, or farmers. Half a year into the journey, he finally caught his first sight of the western mountains, and the view left him awestruck. Even from hundreds of miles away, the vastness of the mountain range was something he would not have believed possible had he not seen it with his own eyes. Like a jagged wall that stretched up thousands of feet, the mountains reached up into the clouds and beyond. From what he could see, the mountain range seemed both endless and impassable. Briefly, he wondered why the Shadow Flame Society was even needed to protect the western border of the empire. Hidden behind a wall greater than any man could build, it seemed like the empire had little need for additional protection. When he arrived at the foot of the mountains several weeks later, he spent some time camping in the hills, suddenly reluctant to move on. Eager though he was to join the Shadowflame Society, the journey to get here had taken him over 2 years, and finding it at an end he had trouble taking the final step. He had changed in many ways since the start of his journey, but some small part of him still felt like that country boy who had marveled at the sight of Fulai City. Few of the people he had grown up with had ever traveled more than a week away from Riverbend. When he set off on his journey to Fulai City, it had felt like a great adventure, a tale he would someday tell his grandchildren. Yet now, he had traveled far beyond Fulai City, and he stood at the edge of an empire he had grown up believing was endless. Soon, he would step over that edge. Although before him still lay mountains so vast they beggared belief, he knew that after he joined the Shadowflame Society, he would travel to the lands beyond those mountains. The prospect was daunting. Eventually, he set off again, traveling north in search of one of the border cities. The search took longer than expected, and he spent several weeks just to find a village with people who could tell him where to go. After another month, he reached a walled city that looked to be larger than Silvermere, with traveling merchants and caravans continuously moving through its wide gates. With some trepidation, Aaron approached the city, knowing that behind its gates he would find the first steps of his next journey. Yet when he stepped through the gates, the trepidation made way for excitement. He had finally arrived. End of Volume 1. Chapter 68. The story so far. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Aaron grew up the son of a common guardsman in a small town named Riverbend. His mother abandoned him when he was just a small child, and he was raised by his father. After Aaron's father was mortally wounded by bandits, on his deathbed he revealed that Aaron's mother had been a mage. Aaron took revenge for his father's death, killing the bandits responsible by barricading the farm where they were hiding out and setting it ablaze with them inside. With his father dead and knowing that his mother had been a mage, Aaron decided to travel to Fulai City in hopes of joining the academy, a magical college. Envied that when he was tested for magical talent at the academy, Aaron was discovered to have a forbidden realm, a forbidden type of magic that would see him imprisoned and killed by the academy if he was caught. Aaron fled the academy in Fulai City with the help of Master Zhao, a powerful mage and member of the academy with mysterious motives. During their travels, Master Zhao instructed Aaron in swordsmanship and magic, helping him gain 2 additional realms, Fire and Shadow. Master Zhao greatly sped up his training by giving him a realm-opening pill, a type of pill containing concentrated essence. After Aaron took the pill, the essence within it forced open his connections to his realms. Eventually, they reached a monastery headed by Grandmaster Windsong, an old friend of Master Zhao. Here, Aaron gained a wind realm, and he was further instructed in the use of magic while forging friendships with some of the monastery's students. Aaron and Master Zhao were betrayed to the academy by Windsong, and although they survived the academy's attack, the monastery suffered heavy casualties. After the attack, Master Zhao left with Aaron and Jiang Fei, one of the monastery's students, explaining that they would travel to the Shadowflame Society. Shortly after they departed, Master Zhao left Aaron and Jiang Fei, telling them that his presence would only draw further attention and attacks from the academy. During their travels, Aaron got involved in a battle with a powerful academy mage named Stormleaf. In a desperate bid to survive, Aaron managed to defeat Stormleaf by using the essence of nearly a dozen realm-opening pills at once. Although successful, this desperate action left him severely injured and opened his realms further than his body could withstand. Aaron was helped by Lord Jiang, who taught him how to use body refinement to allow his body to withstand the essence within him, while also greatly increasing his strength in combat. During their time at Lord Jiang's estate, Aaron and Jiang Fei grew close, but their time together was cut short after a group of members of the Jiang clan attempted to use Aaron to challenge Lord Jiang's authority. Although Lord Jiang easily dealt with them, the incident made him decide to take back control of the Jiang clan, and he left, taking Jiang Fei along as his apprentice. Aaron traveled alone for some time, but eventually, he got drawn into a conflict between 2 exceedingly powerful individuals, Senecio and Panurge, gods of order and chaos, supposedly. Panurge offered to accept Aaron into the ranks of chaos to protect him from the academy, who were on the side of order, but when Aaron refused, he instead whisked him off to a cell in some unknown place. Handing Aaron a Force Realm scroll and some spells, Panurge told him that with a few decades of practice, he should be able to escape by himself. Aaron managed to escape the cell after just a year using the condensed essence of 5 realm opening pills, but the cell turned out to be deep within an academy prison, and in the ensuing battle Aaron was heavily injured. After he recovered, Aaron finally set off for the Shadowflame Society. Characters: Aaron. The protagonist. Master Zhao. A powerful mage who helped Aaron escape from the academy. Despite the time they spent traveling together, much about him still remains a mystery to Aaron. Grandmaster Winsong. An old friend of Master Zhao who headed a monastery where mages studied magic. Winsong betrayed Aaron and Master Zhao to the academy, but after the academy's attack failed, he was caught and imprisoned by the academy. Aaron eventually freed Winsong from his cell while making his own escape, but he fell in the ensuing battle, dying while fighting at Aaron's side. Adept Kadir. One of the mages at Winsong's monastery, and a teacher and friend to Aaron. After the fall of the monastery, he escaped into the mountains to hide from the academy. Amar Guha. An initiate at Winsong's monastery and talented swordsman who became a good friend of Aaron's. He joined Adept Kadir in fleeing into the mountains. Jiang Fei. An initiate at Winsong's monastery who traveled with Master Zhao and Aaron after the academy's failed attack, eventually becoming a close friend, and maybe more, to Aaron. A low-ranking member of the powerful Jiang clan, she was lifted into prominence when Lord Jiang decided to take her as his apprentice. Stormleaf. A powerful academy mage who intended to kidnap Jiang Fei and kill Aaron. This did not work out well for him. After Aaron burned him to a crisp, Lord Jiang took his skull as a decorative paperweight. Lord Jiang. A powerful mage, body refinement practitioner, patriarch of the Jiang clan, and potential competitive eating world champion, Lord Jiang helped Aaron recover after his encounter with Stormleaf by teaching him body refinement. When members of the Redstone branch of the Jiang clan challenged his authority, he decided to leave and take back control of the Jiang clan, taking Jiang Fei with him as his apprentice. Senecio. A mysterious representative of the forces of order, Senecio is an extremely powerful ally of the academy and possibly a god. Despite being on the side of order, Senecio has so far shown no hostility toward Aaron. Panurge. A representative of the forces of chaos and self-proclaimed god, Panurge is a temperamental and powerful liar and scoundrel, as well as an enemy of the academy who may or may not be an ally or enemy to Aaron. Magic realms. Realms are parts of reality that are filled with concentrated magic essence. Mages can draw essence from these realms, and the stronger their connection to a realm is, the more essence they can draw in. In common parlance, the word realm is often used to refer to the connection rather than the realm itself. Normally, a mage's connection to his realms will gradually strengthen over time as he uses essence, but there are ways for mages to rapidly strengthen the connections. Realm scrolls. Magical items that can be used to grant someone a connection to a realm. This connection will initially be sealed, and the mage will have to break through it himself. This is normally a slow process, but it can be sped up if a mage uses a realm opening pill or, like Aaron, has access to certain special kinds of essence. Essence. Concentrated magical energy that is drawn from realms and can be used to perform techniques or spells. While doing so is normally safe, if a mage somehow takes in more essence than his body can handle, he might die. Seals. Seals are made from essence, and can be used to mask or even seal off a mage's connections to his realms. Techniques. Techniques are relatively simple and straightforward ways to use essence, for example using fire essence to form and throw a fireball. Spells. Spells are complex ways to manipulate essence. Far more difficult to learn than simple techniques, spells also have the potential to be far more powerful. Examples of spells so far are Wind Blade, Battering Force, and Force Shield. Body refinement. Body refinement uses essence to strengthen the body rather than to perform spells. Natural essence. A special kind of essence which is drawn from the natural world rather than from realms, and which is extremely effective when used for body refinement. While drawing it in by oneself is normally too slow to be useful, it can also be gathered by consuming plants or animals that contain a heavy concentration of natural essence. Realm opening pills. Realm opening pills are pills made from condensed essence. When someone with a closed or weak realm takes a realm opening pill, his connection to the realm will be forcibly opened and widened, greatly increasing his access to the realm. As Aaron discovered, the essence contained in realm opening pills can also be used directly, provided that one is able to withstand the pain of being filled with far more essence than would otherwise be possible. This may not be safe. Void bags. Void bags are bags that have been enchanted to have their own void realm, a space where mages can store items. Void realms can be far larger than the bag they're linked to, and the weight of items in a void realm is not transferred to the void bag that contains it. Chapter 69 The Border City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Aaron spent several hours exploring the city, which he discovered was named Aramont after asking some of the locals. Although it was even larger than Silvermere, there was an aura of impermanence to it, as if many of those in the city either arrived only recently or did not plan to stay for long. The city was littered with inns and taverns, far more than would be found in any normal city, and as Aaron wandered the streets he soon realized that many of the people there were either traveling merchants or youths hoping to join the Shadowflame Society. After a time, he got hungry, and he stopped at a small food stall on the side of the road, where an old man stood beside a red-hot grill. "What'll you have?" the old man asked as Aaron stopped in front of him. "I've got flatbread, grilled goat, mutton, sausages, and ribs." "I'll have a piece of flatbread with grilled goat," Aaron said. "Just give me a moment to prepare it," the man said, taking a piece of meat and putting it on the wood grill inside his stall. Soon, the smell of roasted meat wafted into the air, and Aaron's mouth watered in anticipation. As the old man prepared the food, he gave Aaron a measuring look. "Planning on joining the society?" Aaron nodded. "I just arrived, but I'm hoping to join as soon as I can." "Got any good tips?" There was little point in hiding his intentions. With a good portion of the people in Aramont being to join the Shadowflame Society, it would be more suspicious if Aaron said he was there for some other reason. Moreover, the old man looked like he might know a thing or two about how things worked in the city. "Bad idea, what with everything that's going on across the border and all," the old man said with a shake of his head. "What's going on across the border?" Aaron asked, his interest immediately aroused. "Many things, all of them bad," the man replied. "Caravans disappearing, villages getting burned to the ground, society patrols being ambushed. Things are never quiet on the other side, but nowadays, it's as if the whole region has gone mad." "You're saying I shouldn't join the Shadowflame Society?" Aaron asked. "I'm just saying it's no place for a nice young man like yourself, is all," the man replied. Aaron smiled wryly at hearing himself being described him as a nice young man, and he wondered what the man would think if he knew about the things Aaron had done over the past few years. Nothing good, he suspected. "I'll keep it in mind," he said noncommittally. Of course, no matter how dangerous joining the Shadowflame Society might be, it could hardly be more dangerous for Aaron than staying in the Empire. "Do what you will," the old man said with a shrug. "Not like you youngsters ever have much sense. Anyway, the food's ready." Aaron thanked the man for his advice and paid him for the food, then went on his way, eating as he walked. The grilled meat tasted even better than it smelled, and for some time, he idly wandered the streets of Aramont, content at finally tasting some simple hot food again. As he considered what the old man had told him, he decided to ask around a little more, to see if maybe anyone else could tell him what exactly was going on across the border. Aaron spent some hours browsing the city, stopping by several inns to talk to merchants and locals about the situation on the other side of the border. Yet although everyone seemed to know about the general state of things, nobody could tell him any details. Even the merchants who traveled across the border with trade caravans only knew that travel was more dangerous than usual. The young people who hoped to join the Shadowflame Society were all dismissive when they talked about the dangers of crossing the border, and Aaron could not help but think that perhaps the old man had been right about youngsters' lack of sense. After several hours, Aaron gave up, at least for the time being. He had not even begun to start thinking about ways to get recruited, and he would have plenty of time to figure things out later. For now, he would just find a decent inn, and focus on learning more about how the recruitment process worked. But first, he thought, he would get something more to eat. Even if he was still full from the grilled meat he ate earlier, he was sure he had some space left for another few bites. He passed a few food stalls, but dismissed them when he saw their offerings. Finally, he came across a food stall run by an old woman, and when he saw the dumplings she sold, he was instantly reminded of Jiang Fei. "How much?" he asked. "3 coppers for a dozen," the woman replied. Aaron was about to order when suddenly, a voice sounded. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. Not unless you like the taste of rat meat, at least." The old woman turned around with an angry glare, but when she saw the man who had spoken, her face fell. "Apologies, young Master Darkfire," she said. "I did not know he was a friend of yours." Aaron had turned as well, and seeing the man who had spoken, he could not help but be surprised. Darkfire was young, around Aaron's age, with long dark hair and a handsome face. Although he wore a simple black robe, he would have stood out in any crowd. Even if Aaron was by no means short, Darkfire stood at least half a foot taller than him, with broad shoulders and arms that were thick with muscle. Feeling some envy, Aaron realized Darkfire looked like a hero out of legend. Yet he could not bring himself to dislike the man. There was something unusually open and straightforward about his manner that immediately appealed to Aaron, especially after the time he had spent with the ever-deceitful Panurge. "If you follow me," Darkfire said, "I'll show you a place with better food." "All right," Aaron said, deciding that for now, he would trust the man. If things changed, he was confident that he was strong enough to escape unharmed. They left the food stall behind, the old woman silently glaring at them as they walked away. After a short while, they arrived at another food stall that sold dumplings, and these turned out to be of excellent quality. "Who are you?" Aaron asked as they ate. "My name's Dao Qianjun," the man replied, "though people usually call me Darkfire." "Are you a mage?" The nickname reminded Aaron of Windsong and Master Zhao's alias, Flameheart, and he wondered if the name Darkfire had similar origins. "If only," Darkfire said with a sigh. "The nickname's because of my lack of talent in magic. I have a fire realm, but I never managed to open it. So when I try to produce fire, well, there's no light." Aaron nodded in understanding. "So why did you save me from eating rat dumplings?" "Other than an honest desire to stop others from experiencing the horrors of badly cooked rat meat." Darkfire made an exaggerated grimace. "Truth is, it's that sword of yours," he said, pointing toward the sword at Aaron's side. Aaron had hidden the star metal sword in one of his void bags, but the sword he wore was one of the treasures he had taken from the Herald's stronghold, large and heavy, with perfect balance and a blade that never seemed to dull. It was only slightly inferior to the star metal sword. "The sword? What about it? If you know how to use it, I was hoping you'd be up for a few rounds of practice." An eager grin appeared on Darkfire's face, and even if Aaron was still slightly wary, he could see no signs of anything but guileless enthusiasm in Darkfire's expression. "All right then," he said. "I suppose I could do with some practice." "Perfect," Darkfire replied. "Follow me. We can use the training grounds at my home." Chapter 70 Darkfire. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When they arrived at Darkfire's home, Aaron was stunned for a moment. It was not so much a house as it was a vast mansion, large enough to serve as the headquarters of a merchant clan and surrounded by a 10-foot wall. "You live here?" Aaron asked with some disbelief. For the time being, Darkfire replied. I was hoping not to have to stay here long, but then. He sighed before finishing the sentence. It's been a while already. Aaron remained quiet. Although he was curious, he didn't want to pry into Darkfire's affairs. So, you want to go a few rounds? Darkfire asked, changing the subject. Aaron nodded. It would be good to get some practice. Darkfire led the way through the gate, Aaron following him inside. Within the walls, a large field lay next to the mansion, empty except for some training dummies and other practice equipment. Darkfire took out some wooden training swords, tossing one to Aaron. The sword was heavier than Aaron expected. From its weight, he thought the center must be filled with lead. Ready when you are, Darkfire said with an eager grin. Aaron gave the sword a few practice swings, then nodded. He stepped forward with the sword raised in front of him, and Darkfire did the same. They started slowly, cautiously exchanging blows and testing each other's defenses. At once, Aaron found himself impressed with Darkfire's skill. The young man's style reminded him of Master Zhao's, with near-perfect control and sudden powerful attacks. Although he had planned not to use the strength he owed to his training in body refinement, Aaron soon found himself lacking the skill to match Darkfire. Unwilling to lose, he decided to use just a bit of his real strength, just enough to avoid embarrassing himself. As Aaron attacked with greater strength and speed, Darkfire's eyes lit up in what seemed to be excitement. A moment later, his strength and speed increased as well, and once more Aaron found himself hard pressed to keep up with his opponent. Again Aaron increased the strength and speed of his attacks, and again, his opponent did the same. This continued for some time, until at last Aaron felt he could go no further, yet Darkfire had ceased to increase his power slightly earlier, leaving the two equally matched. Between Darkfire's greater skill and Aaron's greater strength and speed, neither was able to gain the upper hand over the other. Yet the fight filled Aaron with excitement. Finally, he had found a sparring partner who was his match physically, and who wasn't trying to kill him. They sparred for some hours, and already, Aaron could tell that his skills were benefiting from the experience. He was forced to go all out to match Darkfire, but without the risk of death, he was able to focus on his skills and technique. Finally, Darkfire stepped back, panting loudly. That's enough for now, he said, then promptly sat down on the grass. From the look of it, he was as exhausted as Aaron felt. Aaron sat down as well, his body weary and weak from hours of hard exercise, and his robes soaked in sweat. For some time, they sat in silence, both recovering from the fight. You're a body refinement practitioner, Aaron said after a while, the exhaustion still slowly ebbing from his body. BNOL.M, and so are you, Darkfire replied. Your technique needs some work, but you really are monstrously strong. I haven't had an opponent like that in years. Aaron didn't mind the criticism, because he knew it was true. Even if his greater physical strength allowed him to match Darkfire, purely in terms of technique he had to bow to the man's superior skill. I could use a good sparring partner, Darkfire said. I'd invite you to stay here with me, but... His voice trailed off as a troubled expression appeared on his face. But what? Aaron asked. Even if he had no serious intention of staying with Darkfire, the word still sparked his curiosity. Associating with me isn't a good idea. It will hurt your chances of being recruited. As Darkfire spoke, it was clear from his voice that the words troubled him. How so? Aaron asked, now even more curious. My family holds some influence within the society, Darkfire said. Normally, that would have been enough for me to join directly. But with my lack of magical talent. He shook his head dejectedly. I'll have to join the same way outsiders do, by being recruited here in the city. But with your strength, how hard can that be? Aaron asked. Having seen Darkfire fight, it seemed like the Shadowflame Society should be happy to have him. I would be easy if I were someone else, Darkfire responded. But because of my family, things aren't as simple. Why not? Aaron asked. To be recruited, a novice needs to select you to join a patrol across the border, Darkfire explained. But few novices would risk angering my family's enemies within the society by recruiting me, and those that would are afraid of being blamed if something happens to me across the border. I'm not too worried about that, Aaron said. I'm in no hurry to join, and I figure I'm strong enough to get recruited eventually. Then, will you stay? Darkfire asked, a smile appearing on his face. With a few hours of daily sparring, I think we could both grow a fair bit stronger. Aaron hesitated, but then he shook his head. I can't, he said. Even if Darkfire's information about the Shadowflame Society would be invaluable, he couldn't bring himself to endanger the young man. Why not? Darkfire asked, a confused look on his face. If you're not concerned about your chances of being recruited, what's there to worry about? There are people after me, Aaron said. Powerful people. It's part of the reason I'm here. You don't have to worry about that, Darkfire said with a shake of his head. Many people here are fleeing something or someone. But within Shadowflame territory, no one would dare come after you. Aaron was silent for a moment, but then, he decided to repay Darkfire's honesty in kind. It's the Academy. You've managed to piss off those bastards. Darkfire frowned for a moment, but then, a grin appeared on his face. It doesn't matter. We're in Shadowflame territory. Even if you killed 1,000 of them, they wouldn't dare attack you here. Aaron shook his head. They will want, he began. It doesn't matter, Darkfire interrupted him. There are many dangers around here, and even more when you cross the border. But the Academy isn't something you have to worry about. Aaron slowly nodded, although he still wasn't entirely convinced. So will you stay? Darkfire asked. All right, Aaron said. It would be good to have a sparring partner, and he knew that with Darkfire's help, he would be able to learn far more about the Shadowflame Society than he would otherwise. It's settled then, Darkfire said, a broad smile appearing on his face. Now, how about we go and celebrate with some drinks?